Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Can.
hello. Hello.
You're kind of quiet, though, guy.
Okay. Let's see if I can turn this up a little. Any better? Nope.
No, not much.
Verify that I've got my
Maybe get the speaker by your mouth, your headset, or oh,
it's
yeah,
just the microphone. Is that better?
that's better. But Bettina came across, really
What'd you say?
loud.
Oh,
Yeah, Bettina comes across like normal. You come across really quiet, very soft.
huh.
Not Bettina, Guy does.
Hello.
Yep.
Hello. Is any better? Hello.
I'm just logging into my computer too, so I have a video.
Yeah, better.
Okay. Yeah, that does sound more.
Looks like you're doing a podcast today.
Yeah.
Hey, Guy, you look like you're on the radio.
Good. See if I can get the microphone out of the way a little bit. Or I can put it right in front of my face. That's always a good look, right?
Yeah.
I'm excited to share what I've been learning, so.
Great. We're excited too. Just give it a minute. See if we can get everyone else. There's Jeremy. How you doing, Jeremy?
Good afternoon, everybody.
How you doing?
Good. The best December, warmest December ever so far.
Yeah. I'm hoping for snow, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Are you a skier guy?
Once upon a life I was, but I haven't skied for a long time.
Sounds like me.
But, yeah.
Guy, you're wearing a sport coat and everything today. What's the deal?
I'm presenting. I'm trying to look professional for you guys.
You do? You look
Even
great.
today.
You do. Yeah, it's a good look.
Got out of my sweats. I do still have my flip-flops on, though.
We would have
Couldn't
never
quite do
known.
Yeah, thanks COVID, we all can wear shorts to our team meetings now.
That's true.
Shorts and a sports coat.
I'm actually at the airport, so you wouldn't even know it, right?
Mm,
Yeah. What time's your flight take off?
Well, they delayed it to 5:40, so it's supposed to be at 4 o'clock, so I have a little more time.
Oh, yeah.
Just barely got here, so
And you'll get there like 8 in the morning or something?
actually 11. We're going flying to Amsterdam.
Okay.
That
That's
should
nice.
be
It's a nice view from the airport there.
good.
Except when those ghosts kind of peek through the background.
I was
Yeah.
looking for a Christmas background. I couldn't find one, so there was. We need some snow here in Park City, right?
yep.
Yeah, everywhere. We need some more snow. All right, it's a few minutes past. We want to make sure we take care of the business today and then give Guy plenty of time for his presentation. Before we get started, is there anybody on here that is new to the group today? Okay, great. So today's agenda, we need to vote on the open positions for next year. And then Guy is going to give a presentation today. I think, oh, there he is, Thiago, just in time. So the open positions that we have are chair-elect, treasurer/secretary, and
Librarian.
librarian, yes. And let me see, it was not too long ago that we sent out the descriptions for each of those. And we had a number of people step up and say they are interested, so we appreciate it. So for chair-elect, the two candidates that we have are Thiago and MZ. Is that correct, MZ and Thiago? You both have volunteered to run for that position, open position?
Yep.
MZ said yes?
Yes. Yeah. Do you guys not hear me? My microphone's kind of faulty today, so
yeah, we can hear you now. That's great.
I'm yelling.
This is MZ yelling.
And then Rob Weaver, Rob has stepped up and volunteered to run for treasurer.
Or librarian.
Or librarian. So we have three people, three positions. Since Thiago and MZ both have shown interest in the chair-elect, we need to have a vote on that position. And then just kind of we should vote for Rob, whether or not everybody should vote yes or no on Rob. It's more of a formality since no one's running against him. But Rob, would you rather take the position of treasurer or the librarian secretary?
I really am indifferent. I'm looking over the roles right now. They both have a 2-year term. I'm happy to do the treasurer side. That's fine.
Yeah, do the money thing.
And I also, and I was also going to say, if anybody would rather be the program chair, I'm more than happy to step down from that and take one of the other positions. So.
Great. Appreciate that. Thank you. So what we need to do is take care of the chair-elect first. Rob's more of a formality. And then whoever is not elected to the chair, either Thiago or MZ, we'll see if they're interested in either a program coordinator, and Bettina then will do the librarian secretary, or if they will volunteer for the library secretary. So my suggestion is that, since we do this anonymously and it's fair for everyone, that we just send an email to Guy and myself on those two positions, on the chair-elect, either Thiago or MZ, and then just say yes on Rob for treasurer. So I'll put my personal email in the chat. Guy, will you do the same thing?
Sure.
And then everybody just copy these two email addresses and send it off right now, and then we'll tally them. And then Guy, if you would do the same, I will also do the same thing.
Okay.
So that our votes count.
We don't need to vote, right? MZ and I.
Pardon me?
I think you do. Sure you do, right? They need to vote too.
Thiago, you get a vote for sure. And MZ, you get a vote also for sure.
And which mail do we use?
Copy both of those email addresses.
Ah, okay.
You need the Jeopardy music, right? Do, do, do.
I think there are 11 of us here today, not counting the note takers. Is that what you see, Guy?
Yeah.
That's what I have too.
Okay. Do you want me to create a spreadsheet to tally these? I'll put it in the-
If you need one.
Yeah, I don't think we need necessarily, but
I was thinking more of a record in our AISIG Google Drive.
yes, yeah, exactly. Okay, I got 11 emails. Um, did you get all 11, Guy?
Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've got 11. Okay. Yep, I've got 11.
11 different emails. We got 2 from Rob, but 11
Yep.
different ones.
Yep.
And it actually very close voting, but for the chair-elect, and Guy will concur if you've add them up, we have Thiago as the chair-elect. But it was very close.
Yay.
So, and Rob confirmed as the treasurer also. So we'll make those 2 official. Now, for MZ, would you like to volunteer for the open position of librarian secretary or program coordinator and have Bettina be the librarian secretary?
I'm a really bad librarian secretary, so I wouldn't volunteer for that.
But you've been really good program coordinator.
I can do that.
Hey, great.
As long as Bettina's okay with the other one, but I don't know.
I'm fine if you can get me set up on Google Docs, and I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, we can do that. So just for clarification then, program coordinator will be MZ, library secretary will be Bettina, treasurer Rob, the chair next year Jeremy, chair-elect Thiago. Is there anybody, I mean, just so we do the Bettina and MZ switch officially, everybody in favor, either raise your hand, say aye. Anybody opposed to that? Okay, great. So now we have an official formal vote that we all agreed to it. And those will be the official positions going forward from here. Thank you all for volunteering, for voting, for participating. I know we only meet a couple of times a month, but it takes more time and work than you would think if you're not participating. And I appreciate, this past year, all the work that everyone has done, especially MZ and Bettina, getting all of those speakers for us and getting everything set up. And just, it's a lot of work, and they've done a really great job. Everyone has. So appreciate all your work. And going forward, I'm sure Jeremy will take this to the next level and keep things going. By way of announcements, we will not meet anymore the rest of this year. Next week is the 19th. If we needed to, we were going to do the vote on the 19th, but we don't. So we will not meet on the 19th or the 26th. We have discussed not meeting on the 2nd since it's still part of the holiday. A lot of us will still be out of town. So going forward for the new year, unless Jeremy and the committee wants to change it, we are going to meet the 1st and 3rd of the month. That's the current schedule. And so that would mean we will not meet again until the 16th, which will be the 3rd. And then we'll continue in February, 1st and 3rd Friday of the month. So next.
Do you have a preference of when you'd like to do the speaker, as the 1st or the 3rd, or just kind of see how it works out, and then?
I think we have done the speaker historically on the 2nd one so just so everybody doesn't have to try to switch, at least in their mindset, when the speaker is. I would suggest we do it on the 3rd week.
Yeah.
But sometimes, you'll get a hot speaker that only can do it on maybe that 1st week, and then we swap them, or you guys swap them.
Okay.
I think, we don't have to be rigid. We can be flexible there. But tentatively, the speaker on the 3rd would be probably matching what we've currently done.
Great, then we can ask Neil or whoever is doing the announcement at the meeting the week before, then to kind of announce it and remind everybody we're doing that.
Yeah, it's a great idea. That gentleman on your left, Bettina, is he?
That's my husband.
Want to join us?
No, he's we're at the Delta Club, so he's right next to me. It's so funny.
Nice.
He's actually an ex-CIO, so he could join right in.
Oh yeah, there you go. Well, congratulations everyone on your elected positions. Excited to see where we go with this next year. Any other announcements that we need to make? Jeremy, you ready to go next?
For Thiago and Jeremy, if you feel like you have an idea of where the group is heading for the new year, and if you shared with us, so Bettina and I, as working on the program, could align with your guidance as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that's great. We probably should figure out when we want to get together here, but I don't know if we'll be able to, maybe the first part of the year when we don't have our discussion, maybe we can, we'll schedule something out here.
Sounds great.
And I'll send an email out today to the entire greater AI SIG, letting them know of our election today, who the new elected officials will be going forward. And then Jeremy, you have access, or Bettina has access to that email list, and she'll get that to you if you want to send an email out regarding anything going forward. All right. there are no other announcements, we'll turn the rest of the day over to Guy, and we're really excited to hear his presentation. So, Guy, floor is yours.
Thank you. And I'll finish the spreadsheet later. I'm starting to put it all together, but
Okay, so
Okay.
Guy, I'll record you, and then we can have a record of it.
yes, I'm actually, yeah, that's great. Let me share my screen, which I haven't ever done in, oh, there it is, share in Teams. So hopefully I can figure this out. All right, can you guys see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you all for, I mean, this is kind of fun. I haven't presented at SIG for a while, so I've been doing some research on AI implementation failures and how they kind of, from the technical side, it's not legal advice or anything, but I've been doing some expert witness stuff. I think I shared that with you guys a little while ago, and I've been trying to expand that practice, and I just see a real need for a coming need for AI specific knowledge about this. And I think this is, you can kind of flip this talk on its head and see at your organizations what you might need to do to protect and defend your organizations from possible legal threats due to AI stuff. So a little bit more about me. Got 20 plus years in software engineering. I'm beginning to specialize in technical analysis for some complex software disputes. Basically, I help non-technical decision makers understand what happened inside the system, the code, architecture, security, performance, timelines. Attorneys hire me when they need clarity. Yeah, and so this is definitely a work in progress. I don't have a definitive list, and I expect new items to be added to this list as AI regulation matures. And this is kind of a little background on AI regulation. I don't know if it, and as I'm going, if somebody just wants to, if you have comments or questions, just raise your hand or yell at me. I'm going to put the screen up here, so if you guys raise your hand, I can glance up there and see it. But and then, yeah, so we're kind of in a really state of flux with current state of AI regulation. I don't know if you guys caught the executive order that was signed yesterday, but, well, the upshot of all this, I'll walk through a few of these. Like in the brief history, we had Executive Order 14110 signed by President Trump, which was kind of, was 111 pages long, very detailed for an EO, had a lot of fairly detailed standards or requirements in it, and it had a 15-month lifespan. So Executive Order 14179 was revoking that old order, and the policy goes signaling a shift with the Trump administration of sustaining and enhancing America's global AI dominance. And so, yeah, so then that kind of threw the regulations back into like, okay, well, what do we do now? What's the idea? So then yesterday, President Trump signed another executive order basically saying we're not going to, we're not going to have 50 different state regulations. We're going to have a federal framework. And so this probably going to be challenged. The federal preemptive doctrine versus state police powers they'll come into effect, and this will be worked out, hopefully, and without too much trouble. But there are some things that we can look to as we go. For example, even though that executive order yesterday, we don't know how that's going to affect, for example, our Utah AI regulation, which we were one of the first states, or the first state to enact AI regulation, and we're kind of on the innovation protection, but we wanted to have some consumer protections in there. So I don't know how I haven't done that analysis. I'm not an attorney, probably won't do it, but the executive order that was signed yesterday kind of says if you're not compliant with the federal policy, then we'll come after you basically, and we'll sue you and stuff like that, or we'll take away funding and things like that. So the Utah regulation, somebody's looking at that, I'm sure right now, saying, well, are we compliant? Are we in line with the federal policy? And yeah, we'll see. But those are the things that we have to kind of worry about here. But to be honest, with all the kind of frothiness of this and instability, yeah, I have a slide here on the different states that have put stuff in, and everybody's looking at this now. How, what do we need to do? NIST has an AI risk management framework, which is probably our best, the primary U.S. technical standard. It is voluntary, but it is increasingly referred to in contracts and RFPs and industry standards. So it's kind of becoming the de facto standard, and whether or not the executive and the current federal laws kind of say, yeah, we'll just adopt this, or if they go to something else, we don't know. But so yeah, there's a lot going on there. The EU, we talked a little bit about this at a different session. The EU was on it. They have some very significant penalties for. I mean, they're kind of the risk-based, and if you screw up, you get hammered, basically. And that's another one. And if you do business in the EU, then you have to comply with that, similar to GDPR. So what does this all mean? Well, from a technical standpoint, we can look at it like we have current processes traditionally that you get engineering decisions, technical decisions, you get business decisions, and they all kind of feed into your operations and your organizations. And sometimes those have negative impacts, or at least surprises, and then you end up with complaints and legal disputes. Traditionally, humans make those decisions, and we have learned how to manage humans, well, to some degree, right? And you consider all the effort that goes into an HR practice or an HR division. That's kind of the formal aspect of managing humans, and we need that because humans, as we're just non-deterministic, right? We're not entirely predictable, and so similarly, when we look at now AI systems coming online, we have a whole nother layer underneath or foundational to a lot of these engineering decisions, business decisions, operations. Sometimes these AI systems tie right into your operations, right? A lot of times that's where a lot of the gains are happening. And so you're having this impact on from a non-deterministic system. And usually, it's not just one system, there's 10 or 12 or 5 or whatever operating at that organization. So how do we manage that? How do we manage the non-determinism that's inherent in those systems? So when things go wrong, systems fail, it's your artifacts, your logs, your models, and code that becomes evidence that gets produced. And then experts like me will go through it and try to figure out exactly what's happening. And where the law isn't clear, we're going to fall back to reasonable engineering practices and what is reasonable. And they're going to rely on experts a lot more than they would if they had the law and the law was clear and they had a bunch of case studies and case law and stuff like that. So just to be clear now, I want to be talking about engineering, and I'm not going to, like, the legal implications of what we're talking about are cases are won or lost, but we're really talking about the technical aspects of that. How do we influence that? So the failure patterns, I've found kind of 7 patterns that have happened, I guess, and I've got a few case studies for each one. These repeatedly show up in public cases. They're not really exotic edge cases, and I think so, just from the conversation we've had in this group that many of you have seen these over and over again in your organizations or in the clients that you service. So just as a high level here, we've got fragile or misspecified data pipelines, inadequate model validation and stress testing, missing documentation and audit trails, access control failures and data misuse. There's no operational monitoring or drift detection, failure to communicate model limitations, vendor and integrator errors. So you might notice that many of these are kind of classic software and systems failures, but they're now amplified by AI scale and opacity. So all these are rooted in practices and principles that can be captured, analyzed, and produced as evidence in a dispute. Does that make sense? Any questions or? Okay, let's dive into the patterns. Fragile data pipelines. So wrong labels or poor proxies, for example, cost as a proxy for health. Silent schema drift in upstream systems, bad joins and missing rows that bias the sample, or an inability to reconstruct training versus production data sets. So there's a little kind of a data pipeline there, raw data to ETL and joins to features, model, and then the big question mark there is bad labels. That's one of the examples. So, bad data, wrong labels at any stage, it just poisons the model. And so if you're not governing the data correctly or adequately, then you can open up to liabilities.
How is it amplified by AI?
Well, that was a little part of the, I'll show you back to here that I couldn't figure out how to put in this one here. But one of the things that, AI accelerates our abilities. And so instead of doing 10 transactions in a month or something, you might do 100. And so that's one way that it scales, right? If it's speeding up your operations and processes, the risk surface area of doing per transaction, you have, if you have a certain amount of risk per transaction, then you times it by 10 because of AI, then you have greater risk. You have 10 times the risk. That's one way. And then I'll go back to that specific failure pattern. Like how is this risk amplified by AI? Is that we're using that data more and more. So if you had a data pipeline before, and that went through a human and handled a certain amount, but now without that human in the loop there, the human would filter it and make it right? So you get bad data in. I've seen this over and over again. It's often the person who's almost lowest on the totem pole, but they're like, yeah, I've been at this job for 30 years, and I know when that record comes in, it's not going to be right. So I have to do this and this and this to get it to go into the system correctly and get the right answer. And so without that human there, and then doing 10x the volume, you're going to amplify that any errors that come in if there are errors, right? If you don't capture all that knowledge that human was there, or if you don't have somebody like that human in the loop looking at it and making sure it's right. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely.
So let's talk a case study. This is a UK Post Office Horizon. This was a data pipeline and software defect issue where the Horizon accounting system was used across the UK post offices, and the data pipeline was treated as ground truth without adequate challenge. So bugs, race conditions, poor reconciliation meant that the accounting quote unquote facts were sometimes fiction. Hundreds of sub postmasters were prosecuted because the system calculated that their balances were negative and that they were stealing postage and money from the UK post office. And so some of them even spent jail time, and then they're like, what's going on? So they got the engineers, ended up, the experts went in and did all that examination and figured out how those false deficits were generated by looking at the Horizon accounting system, not the people that were on the receiving end. So, and then ultimately the Horizon system was deemed in court to be really not a reliable system, and there's in the process of compensating all those sub-postmasters. Some people have even passed on without getting compensation, and it really upended a lot of lives. And in this lesson, like if your transaction pipeline can fabricate deficits, every downstream decision, including legal action based on that pipeline, is not defensible. Like if it's just not right, so if you come in and say, well, it's a black box, I don't know, well, then you're not in a defensible position. You need to know. Another case.
Can I ask something real quick, guys?
Yeah.
On that, how were the other guys prosecuted without the system being dug into? I feel like that they were on a witch hunt. It sounds like.
Well, so some of the detail there, the system was built to detect fraud, and they thought it was doing its job. And
It was based on an assumption.
Yeah, they took the system as ground truth.
Oh,
yeah. And that data pipeline, they just said, hey, this is the truth because this is what this system was built for. They didn't question it enough. And then what I understand is once they started getting hundreds of people, like that doesn't quite make sense. The amount of fraud isn't hundreds. And so they started to take a look, and then the people were countersuing and trying to, affirm their innocence and that they did their job right. So there was a lot of pushback and evidence that, in fact, the UK, the website that I point you to there in the thing, it's an entire website dedicated to this, and hundreds of thousands, well, I don't know if hundreds of thousands of pages of information about what's going on and stuff like that. So it's yeah, it's they scratch your head a little bit, like why didn't they realize this? And yeah, but they really just didn't test the system well enough. They didn't figure it out, right? They didn't run it through the paces enough. So another one, this healthcare risk algorithm, a commercial tool used healthcare cost as a proxy for health need. So that historically underspent on Black patients meant they were systematically underprioritized. So it wasn't really the model's problem, but it was the label that went into the model that they were saying, okay, because Black people historically don't spend as much on healthcare, then that means their healthcare needs aren't as much as the white people. And so anyway, if you were Black and needed something, you might not get it. You might not have gotten approved because of that. And then this OF qual A-level grading algorithm, this blew my mind, but during COVID in the UK, it was just in England, but they weren't attending school, they weren't taking their exams, and those exams were huge. That determined what school you were going to get into, etc. And so their initial take, they said, okay, well, let the teachers give the grade that they would have gotten had they taken the exams. And those were across the board kind of high, which in that case, it sounds kind of innocuous, but the reality of the situation is if those rankings are high, if the teachers say, more kids pass the exams, then their universities are going to get overwhelmed. And that's exactly what happened. Well, through a few loops, they said, hey, we're gonna do this called CAG, and they came in really high, and they're like, well, that can't be right. Is there another way we can look at this? and then they did some, like they took the data, so they had to set up a data pipeline, and they were saying, okay, schools with well, that second bullet point, doing algorithm downgraded high performing students at historically lower performing schools. They had this algorithm that brought all the data in, and then kicked out the grade. So then all these students were like, no way, this isn't going to work for me. And rightly so, right? If you're in a historically lower performing school and you're working your butt off to get out of that situation, and then suddenly you can't get into the college and the university that you wanted to do. So so that was structural bias encoded directly in the pipeline. And what the UK decided to do at the end of the day was they'll take the highest of either of those. And indeed, they did have the next year or two, they just had wiped out their universities. There's like overfull on their universities, and so, but they have worked through that since then. Okay, pattern 2. Okay, I'm gonna have to breeze through these more. Sorry, I'm giving way too much color to them, but inadequate validation. So if you're evaluating narrow or idealized conditions, if you're over-reliant on a single aggregate metric, if there's no systematic subgroup, edge case, or scenario testing, no explicit acceptance criteria tied to a real-world use. So you have the in-distribution validation. So in the model, I wasn't quite familiar with what in-distribution means, but it is when you have your training data, and then you have data that is similar to that training data that you validate against. And so sometimes that's called the test data, and that's basically what the in-distribution validation looks like. That's what that is. And so if you just only test on in-distribution data, meaning data that looks similar to your test data but isn't your test data, so your model is testing to see if your model generalizes to a larger set, but then deploy it, your real world edge cases remain untested, and we can see some of the problems that happen when that happens. So case 1 is Compass recidivism tool. Scores, they're used in the U.S. justice system to determine the probability of recidivism or even a flight risk for bail and sentencing decisions. So ProPublica took a look at this, found different error rates by race, and determined in the data that was available that black defendants were more likely to be labeled high risk but not reoffend, while whites were on the reverse. And so in this case, the aggregate validation wasn't enough. You had to look at the subgroup performance and fairness metrics, and primarily transparency. So there's still some controversy around this. There are other people saying, well, can you do it actually? Could you actually do it any better? Stuff like that. But the biggest challenge to really digging in and solving this is that the Compass model is opaque. It's closed, and there's no transparency there. So all the research people are doing on it are kind of black box research. They're poking at it, reverse engineering it, trying to understand what the bias is and things like that. So, but you can imagine if you were one of those persons affected by this, that would not be a pleasant thing to spend an extra few months in jail and stuff like that. Okay, so then there's the self-driving fatality, the first self-driving fatality, where the system misclassified the pedestrian and disabled that, and there's disabled automatic emergency braking when it was in autonomous mode. So a couple of cases or situations that kind of combined the test conditions and the safety assumptions didn't match real world behavior. And edge case validation, it was night, it was a mid-block, this woman was crossing outside of the crosswalk. There was a complex motion because she was pushing a bicycle. So the car just didn't recognize her. And then the operator of the car wasn't, and that comes up again in another case study, wasn't paying attention. The Ariane Flight 501, They reused the Ariane 4 software, but didn't change it to manage or to handle the higher inter-flight speeds of the Ariane 5. And so they reused the code, but they didn't update the validation envelope, and it failed and blew up. Pattern 3, missing documentation audit trails. So no clear track record of when, where, and how it was deployed. The training data snapshots and hyperparameters are not preserved. Logs are incomplete, rotated away, or never collected. Reconstruction becomes guesswork when something goes wrong. One of the cases I worked on, it was golden because the company had monitoring, and when they noticed a discrepancy, they grabbed all the logs, and so we had great logs to go through, and that really went a long way in the courtroom. I could tell the judge exactly what was going on, and we knew exactly who was accessing that system because of the log files. So without the logs, without the version control and the preserved artifacts, you can't really reconstruct what happens when the system failed. One of the cases here is the Therac 25. You have to be old to know this, but it's 1980s radiotherapy machine. There was race conditions that caused the overdose of the radiation, cryptic error messages, limited logging, inadequate safety analysis, so they couldn't even begin to diagnose the systemic defects that were in there. So you've got to be able to reconstruct. You've got to be able to go in and see exactly what's happening. And you guys know this from a debugging standpoint. Once you start to see defects come up, in this case, they didn't even know that the defects were there because they hadn't experimented enough. They hadn't put them into those real world conditions. So for AI and ML, this is analogous to models making harmful recommendations without proper logging and guardrails. So you might not even know that it's making those harmful recommendations. You might be cruising along with a happy, hey, everything's going well, until you get slapped with a lawsuit or something like that. Horizon evidence issues. So this was back to the post office one. They had incomplete records there. That's right, because they had changed the auditing, so they had incomplete records. They couldn't really go in and see what was actually going on. They had duplicate and inconsistent entries in the evidence spreadsheet. So basically, the court just said, "Hey, this evidence is not reliable." They just threw it out, and had to rely on the testimony of the witnesses and the victims, things like that. Night Capital Trading, some of you might remember this. They lost $440 million in 45 minutes. Basically reusing, well, it was kind of their configuration management. They had dormant code on servers that they didn't realize was there. It got activated during a deployment, and that activation, they were trading. I mean, there's a trading algorithm, and it just said, "Oh, we got to buy everything," and it, bought a bunch of stock, and they got not the insult to injury with this one, because they lost that money in the stocks but then the SEC came along and said, "You know what, you really goofed up because you impacted how our systems work. Like the automatic trading, you can't go in and just blow up the system," and so they got hit with another $12 billion fine on top of this from the SEC. Okay, access control and data misuse. Sensitive data is exposed through unpatched systems or misconfiguration, training on data without proper rights, consent, and provenance tracking, shadow copies of production data used informally in experiments. So this is something that's very relevant to anybody establishing or setting up systems now. You've got to make sure that you aren't using PII in inappropriate ways. So in that center box, I don't know if it's clear, but there's copyright, ACL, provenance and consent. They're just, if those aren't present and you're using that PII in your model, then you've got a huge risk. And then if you're not patching systems or something, that data gets out. So yeah, there's the Equifax breach. I think we probably heard of that, was pretty massive. I think there's a $500 or $700 million settlement out of that, and yeah, up to $700 million. It was just an unpatched Apache vulnerability. The GitHub Copilot lawsuit, the allegations that models were trained on open source code reproduced licensed code without attribution. The court narrowed that down from 22 to 2 claims, but there's still a lot of questions about data use and provenance. And then in Germany, GEMA, and in the US, there's a US authors group that sued OpenAI. They also sued Anthropic. And yeah, so they're trying to understand, you know, training on AI on copyrighted text or lyrics without consent, is that permissible or not? And in Germany, the courts went with the content creators, and they're still, I think they're still duking it out. I know one of the articles said that Anthropic agreed to a settlement to the Authors Guild for this. Pattern 5, no monitoring or drift. So the cute little chart there, over time you have an expected outcome, but because these are non-deterministic learning systems, the actual the actual error rates may increase over time. So you've got to monitor it and keep, just know what's going on with that. So yeah, without monitoring, performance degradation goes undetected. By the time failures are noticed, significant harm may have occurred. In case study number 1, Zillow. If you guys recall, they had this internal pricing prediction model. I don't remember what they called it now. It's not right here, but they made a big deal. I remember when it came out, and they're like, "Oh, we'll buy your home, you know, sight unseen," basically. But in 2021, the model overpaid systematically in volatile markets, and then the program shut down. They lost, I think, $200 or $300 million in that effort, and then had to lay off people. So real world impacts of not, you know, keeping that monitoring, making sure that's not drifting and things like that. Apple Card had a similar thing. Public complaints about possible gender bias triggered the review. They investigated, they found no problem, no fair lending violations, but it highlighted the opacity and the need to demonstrate outcome monitoring and fairness testing. So, and Apple wasn't monitoring their biases and stuff like that. So that's how they got into this, the fact that the public came to complain about it rather than them knowing about it and fixing it. This is the same thing with that healthcare cost risk algorithm. The bias problem was discovered by external researchers, not internal monitoring. And so they didn't even know they had a problem until someone brought it to them and said, "You've got a problem." Okay, pattern 6, model limitations and over-reliance. So we often, you know, overestimate the accuracy of AI systems, and weaknesses aren't often, or often not clearly disclosed or operationally mitigated. So, and then outputs are treated as authoritative rather than probabilistic. So that's a classic. I think we've talked about it here before. Like we come to the CEO and say, "Yeah, I've got 80% confidence in this model," and the CEO says, "That's 100%. We're there." So just got to keep in mind that this is, yeah, these are probabilistic. So there's some real world examples, facial recognition, wrongful arrests. I think there are dozens of these. There's a couple there that were listed, but basically the law enforcement treating the facial recognition technology as strong evidence rather than weak investigative leads. And so then those limitations haven't been communicated or enforced in policy. So the police are out there like, oh yeah, look, we've got a match, let's go get them. Instead of saying, oh, this could be something interesting, let's go research it and see. So yeah, the takeaways, any probabilistic system must come with guardrails and usage guidance, especially when error rates are uneven across groups. Okay, so then another one, test autopilot. This is related back to that first death, but there have been several since then too. And one of the things I point out is that branding and UI can kind of encourage over trust in the system, even though if you read the manuals, they say don't trust the system, but the people that are buying the cars are like, oh yeah, I can just read a book while I'm driving down the road and stuff like that. Again, the UK education, the OFQual algorithm, students and the schools weren't clearly informed about the logic. And so when the outcomes felt unfair and then it was opaque, the public really lashed out. and then the government had a much bigger mess to clean up. All right, pattern 7, I'm just gonna skip through these quickly, but vendor integration errors, basically relying on vendors' representations instead of testing it, and then having the compounding of that various integrations coming together into a system you've got to test the entire system. So the Night Capital was one example of that. Again, the Horizon vendor, the UK, the post office one, and then Uber. It's bringing all those systems. Like in Uber's case, they brought the Volvo system and then their system together, and they ended up disabling the automatic emergency braking. So it's kind of emerged, this risk emerged from the integration, not the individual components. So, all right. So now, kind of in closing, there's and I can do a whole nother session on these defensible principles if we want, but there they are. 7. There's, I think, did I come at 8 or something? 2, 4, 6, 7 of them. But kind of just you want to be aware of these things as you're preparing your systems. You want to check them off, make sure that you've got them covered. And of course, depending on the risk of the systems, you may need to do all of them deeply, or you may need to do all of them shallow, or you may need to do some of them because the risk isn't so great. You're not doing things that would warrant this effort. But okay, and then just a quick slide on kind of how these failures kind of escalate. You make engineering technical inputs, people have operational issues, you get complaints, then it goes to like a discovery phase where you have to submit and produce all the evidence. Those will be the attorneys, maybe the police even are coming to say, you need to give us everything from this time period, from here to here. You get a subpoena and they come and grab it or you give it to them. And then they give that to me and I go through and I try to reconstruct it and figure out what's going on. So my role really there is just to provide clarity, helping the decision makers understand the story. Okay. I've got the slide. If you aren't connected with me on LinkedIn, feel free to snag that and let's connect. But if you want to reach out and talk to me, I'm always available. If you want the references, I've got all the references that I used to kind of bring this together. So that's it. Any questions?
Hey, Guy. One thing that I think I had a personal reference in some of the stuff that you were sharing, and that is that, as developers, a lot of times we reuse code and we're saying, hey, that's really good. I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this class over here. I'm going to do whatever, and you don't realize that 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 piece of functionality that you wrote may end up being used in an entirely different scenario where criticality is way different than what it was originally designed for. So your logging, what originally wasn't designed for something so critical, needs to be completely reassessed. And it looks like, maybe some of those gotchas kind of crept in there because of that, because you're copying code and you're like, hey, this does the trick, and you just don't revisit logging.
Yeah, that could be, and I think just being aware of AI and data governance kind of things, our logging is becoming much more critical. So it's not okay anymore to just have the developers debug logging going on in there, right? You have to be thinking about what is the pipeline and what is the consequence almost. And it depends on the context too, but I think you're right on in highlighting that if you're building code for your weekend project versus this is going to go out to 1 million users, you've got to have a different level of awareness of those things.
And to piggyback on Tiago's comment, as a former software validation engineer, I can't stress enough the level of domain knowledge that needs to be present during validation, because it can very quickly turn into technical debt, that never gets addressed, never, and can surface sometimes down the road when no one expected it, and the people that were involved in development, testing, and releases are already long gone, and all that knowledge is already non-existent.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of that we're relearning, like we're learning again now because of AI and the demands and the risks of AI. But writing code in one context that's adequate for that context, and then reusing it after the developers are gone, or not even reusing it, but using it in that same context, but at 10x or 100x the volume, it can bend it and break it and do have different things. And most of us, at least for me, coming from my engineering background, I have not been thinking about this in terms of the AI and data pipeline and data governance for most of my career. It's just not, it wasn't relevant until like you start to see like, oh yeah, now we're going to, now it's going to be used in this data pipeline as opposed to, in this, every 3 months type of a deal or something. And it's kind of analogous to going from I'm building websites to I'm building enterprise applications. Like you just have a whole host of different things to think about when you're building something for an enterprise versus a mom and pop or something, for yourself on the weekend.
Hey Guy, I noticed that a lot of the examples you used, just based on dates alone, probably predate a lot of the kind of mainstream AI. Was that because those were kind of top of mind cases you were already familiar with, or because maybe it's harder to find high profile, cases directly involving AI?
Yeah, the latter, definitely. There's just not as much out there that are directly attributable to AI. I mean, there are a few examples in there that were, this is definitely AI, but the exercise is like, oh, how can this affect a modern AI pipeline or a modern AI solution? And I think I've come up with good ones, but I'm not saying they're definitive, right? I don't think we have enough experience. There might be a few people in the world that have enough experience to make a definitive list. That I'm not one of them yet, and I'm starting to put that together. I just want to I could come back in a year, and I think I would have another 14 or 7 or whatever patterns that we've lived through since then. Great question, though. Thanks.
Do you mind sharing your slides, or you've copyrighted everything you've produced?
Oh, it's all copyrighted. Don't train on this. No, I'm happy to share. Happy to send them out.
Hey, Guy, I think a tremendous presentation. Appreciate it. And
Great.
one of the things that we really need to think about in today's world is making sure that within your environment that your Active Directory and your rights are set up correctly. So if you have Copilot for your entire organization turned on and people are actively using it, if you don't have your Active Directory or Entra ID set up correctly, people are going to have access to data that they shouldn't. And that is going to cause problems down the line within compliance and governance and on and on. And you really need to set up your entire environment as if you are going to be sued or you're going to have problems. Assume that. So set up your logging, set up everything in advance so that when there are problems, you can quickly and easily track them down, because it's going to happen. You just need to make sure that you set it up correctly from the start. I also wanted to quickly introduce Josh. Hey, Josh is new to the group. He'll be joining us when he can. Josh is with Solution Streams. We've had Justin and Sean has been, on our executive committee. Justin is relatively new. Josh, would you like to introduce yourself and let the group know about what you do for Solution Streams?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad to be here, especially on a Friday afternoon. I'm a new addition to Solution Stream, about 2 weeks in. I was at the AIM event yesterday as well, and I asked Mike if he could allow me to come as well, just to listen in. And obviously, there's a lot of great work going on here, and thoughtful work as well in being methodical and focused on what really matters on some of these issues. And so my work at Solution Stream really is around a new division that we're building around services, particularly fractional services for companies that we have worked with for years and new companies that want to work with us on a consulting basis around fractional chief AI officers and others, meaning being able to build a strategy with a company that's thoughtfully approaching AI from the governance side, but also culture, making sure that people are, feeling really good about the way they adopt it in all senses of the word. And so I've been tapped to be able to bring this in. I bring 20 years of technology experience. I'm not a developer or a coder per se, but I've been in ed tech for quite a while and I just joined Solution Stream 2 weeks ago, and I am learning everything I can, which is why I'm here to listen in. And I sure appreciate the thought and being able to join you today.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks everyone for joining too. We will send an email out regarding today's election. The next meetings on the calendar will be the 3rd week of January. We're not going to meet on the 2nd of January, so it'll be January 16th. Will be the next time we meet. Jeremy will be running the show from now on. Looks like Jeremy had to drop, but appreciate this past year. It's been great, and look forward to seeing everyone in the new year. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Mike, you've been fantastic.
Thank you, you too.
Thanks, Mike.
for working with
Thank
us.
you.
And,
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
and Josh, I'll add
That's
you to
great.
the distribution list as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sabatina. They appreciate that. Have a great
Happy
day.
holidays, everyone.
We'll
Okay,
see
Bye-bye.
you. Thanks.
bye.